Thank you guys for being here. Obviously, reflecting upon Saturday's win, obviously, wins are hard to come by, so we'll take it. But a lot to be taken from that game. I think with any given game, there's a handful of plays I think that determine the outcome. And you look at what occurred. Obviously, there's things we got to clean up: the missed field goal, the fumble, and the punt return. Those are inexcusable things that could be fixed offensively. It seemed like we weren't always in sync, and some drop passes and some things that we got to continue to clean up, which we will. And then you look at really they had the explosive pass play where Jordan Greer kind of gets beat back across his face on a post, and then he's actually able to chase it down and clip the wide receiver's ankles, and then fumbles out of the back of the end zone. The very next defensive series, Kobe Minor goes and gets that sack, forced fumble, where Chandler Martin recovers, and you sit there and look at the turn of events with some of that stuff, and it's kind of unique and be able to show our players, that was an effort play by Jordan Greer. Was he pleased with his technique and the execution initially? No. But the effort by him and the rest of those guys running through to finish that play makes all the difference, and then you kind of look and see how that played out, obviously, with the sack, forced fumble later in the game, or excuse me, the very next series. So, look, when it's all said and done, we'll take the win, and it's good to be able to talk about things that get fixed in a win. The guys had the right mindset and approach yesterday. Obviously, moving into a bye week, if there is such a thing, we're still going to practice this week. We'll modify it. We're not going to go out there for the full time. We're going to modify it, and then the coaches will go on the road later in the week for recruiting, and then turn it back around with a shorter week with us playing South Florida on a Friday on national television. We understand South Florida is a tremendous opponent. You put on the game from last year, and it's they've got the lead well into the third quarter, and then you watch them versus Alabama, and if you took the names off it, you couldn't tell which team was number one in the country, or number two in the country, because South Florida absolutely handled Alabama in a lot of ways, and it was a one-point game going into the fourth quarter. So they're going to present a lot of challenges. They play fast. They put up a lot of points, and obviously their defense is stepped up. And you watch that game versus Alabama versus Miami. Obviously, towards the end of the game, the score may not dictate exactly how the game went, but we're going to have to prepare for that and then get our bodies right and find ways to improve.
Ryan, now your non-conference schedule is completely done after that. Is there I don't want to use refocus, but if there's like a message to the team going into knowing that these conference games are what is going to determine your year?
Yeah, it's we, as you know, Frank, we do truly talk 1 week at a time approach with our guys, but we finished, I believe, undefeated in non-conference, which is great. You always want to do that, but the most important games are the conference ones. And I made mention, listen, guys, it's all conference games from here on out. They're you got to find a way to win them all, but obviously one at a time. And now you guys know now, hey, it's a refocus, and it comes at a good time, right? Like, okay, hey, now's a quote-unquote bye week, an idea to kind of not necessarily catch our breath, but refocus, sharpen those blinders, and figure out where we need to look. But I think our guys understand what's at stake every week, and we're excited, obviously, with going on the road versus a tough opponent on national television to start it off.
And then looking at the MTSU film, what did you see? What did you like? What did you didn't like in terms of the offense?
Yeah, I thought we did some things right. We kind of take what they gave us, right, and then what I didn't like, and I think, I was sitting there thinking about Jonah's question when he asked about, okay, hey, we're not scoring as much. I don't ever take into that. The stats and stuff aren't necessarily that, but we're missed some of the explosive pass plays where the opportunity, if we caught them, it's a completely different ballgame. Maybe put it out of reach a little bit earlier. But I believe, in our three explosive pass play attempts, 2 were actually drops. And those are things we got to fix to work to clean up. Whether teams playing man coverage or playing top down, we got to find ways to get those things. And then there's some run game stuff that, even though we were productive by numbers in the run game, there's still some holes we could have hit and some different things, and continue to find and be productive. And that's with everybody, right? It starts obviously with the play calls. And then it goes, the quarterback's got to continue to improve and be better. But that's every position on offense. And that's kind of the nice thing is, to a T, I ask the team every week in the locker room who can improve, and they all do. But the offense, watched that film and said, okay, there's a lot of things that need to be worked on. And sometimes it may be left guard. Hey, is it my fundamental stepping with this foot? And so that's one of the things this week I've challenged them. Okay, what's the one skill set you need to work on as an individual? And then position coaches, what's that, your position group, something that's kind of reared its ugly head that continues to show up on game film. Let's find a way to fix it in practice, and then collectively as a team, what can we continue to work on?
being at your midweek bye weeks, you I know game 6 in 2 weeks, but you're middle of the season. Where do you kind of evaluate things right now through the first 5 games? Obviously, it's a progression through 12 games.
Yeah, we have not played a complete game, Jeff. That's the one thing that through the first 5 games. First off, disappointed that we haven't won every game. That's the number one factor, right? Is winning football games. I love the expectations and the standards that we set within our own program, right? You're disappointed anytime you lose a game, but those are the games in the past to learn from. And then more than anything is, we can continue to clean up the fundamentals, right? Whether it be tackling, blocking, being better on block defeating, better on the perimeter blocking, all those things. There's those basic things that, at times you look and you're like, wow, we're really good at this, and other times you're like, that's not very good. And so I'm not overly pleased. Look, I know we're doing some great things, and a lot of individuals are at times, but overall as a program, starting with me, we just haven't been consistent, successful, and put together a complete game, and that's my job to make sure we can find a way to go out there and be really good on offense, really good on defense, really good on special teams for 4 quarters. And you're seeing that the different patches of that, and I know that's what every head coach dreams of. And I'm not asking for perfection, but we damn better be striving for it. And we're not close to where we need to be, and that's my job to make sure we continue to get that thing pushed in the right direction with a 4-1 ball club.
Seth said at the end of last game that first time going into a bye week that he's felt healthy. As team-wise, where you at health-wise? Do you feel good about going into the bye week where you are health-wise?
Yeah, look, I think the Sutton Smith injury occurred so quickly into the season, right? Really our starting running back, a guy that we thought had high expectations. Some people would say maybe possibly the most explosive playmaker on the team. You lose in the first game in the first quarter. And for a lot of teams, they would say, oh, wow, that's but you find ways, right? Next man up. And that's part of why we've been able to see the emergence of guys like Brandon and Thomas back again. Obviously, Greg DeRosier will continue to see where he is and evaluate through this bye week. I think defensively we should be back. Obviously, it was good to see Elijah Herring back out there, who certainly still not full speed, but that's one of these things, right? Guys take care of their bodies. There's a lot of guys out there that are fighting through some stuff, but from that overall standpoint, I don't think we had any major injuries in this past game. So moving forward, anybody that we were able to see on the field, hopefully should continue to be out there and see if there's maybe a guy or two that we can get back.
Was DK went out for at the end of the season? Is that going to be anything?
Yeah, I think DK should be good. I don't think it's anything major. I think he's good to go and shouldn't miss any time with injury.
When you look at, you kind of addressed it, but you guys, bye weeks, you got extra time. South Florida, obviously, a lot of challenges to deal with. And how do you manage, big picture things you want to improve this week versus just preparing for South Florida?
Yeah, it's that good combination, Joe. One, it's a little bit different because it's not like it's a Saturday game, so it's okay. You guys always know how I do my math. I don't know. I don't care if I don't know if today's September 16th or we may be in December already. I have no idea. All right, but I do know today is a Monday in my book, right? Then guess what? Starting on Saturday, it's a Sunday in my book because we're playing then, right? And that Monday's Monday's a Tuesday, Tuesday's a Wednesday, all because we're playing on a Friday night. So it does change a little bit because it's not like you got the full deal. Obviously you got to take part in recruiting. I think that's still the lifeline and of any program. So that's going to be part of what we got to do this week. We got to look at ourselves. I always want to do self-scout, but you don't want to get so, caught up in, okay, hey, every time the running back's over here, it's a 68% chance that we may be running or passing that direction. That's great, but is it a high enough percentage where you got to sit there and fix it and change it? You look at what you can do fundamentally to fix, but we're also going to prepare South Florida. We're not where we need to be from a film breakdown standpoint as far as preparing them because there's still things, early this week that I said, hey, these are things that keep showing up game after game that we got to find ways to improve upon. And so, this week I think it's going to be a combination of a little bit of preparation for South Florida. Obviously, make sure that we have an understanding. Hopefully, our guys are starting to get into the film. And then also, how can we improve ourselves? Because ultimately, we tell our guys all the time it's a faceless opponent. Obviously, we understand the different schemes we're going to face, but being prepared is going to be ultra important. But we also got to handle our own business and things that we got to get cleaned up.
Obviously, you talked about the mid-season transfers a couple weeks ago. Then you have last week what happened. You went on the ending of the line when I was that got through. When you think about things like that happening in the context of where this is all headed, what is it like in your 5 weeks doing recruiting to handle all this with potentially happening in the middle of the season and not just at the end of the season?
Yeah, it is unique, right? Like there's who would ever thought that we'd be here? And there's going to be things. Like I tell you guys all the time, I do have the blinders on, focus 1 week at a time, Jonah. But you've got to be prepared for everything in college football, right? I mean, they're talking about the House. I just got an email before coming down here about the House settlement, something new on that. Some of the things that I'm adjusting to during the season right now is like, which will directly affect our recruiting. Our team's going to be at 85 scholarships next year, and then the full roster allotment. Like South Florida has 129 guys on the roster. Okay, well, if the NCAA comes out and says tomorrow, starting January, you're going to 105, and that's your max number. Well, I got to start looking at my own roster. Okay, what's that look like, right? How does that manage? Are we going to be at 105 scholarships? Those are conversations I need to have with our athletic director and our president. Oh, by the way, if we are at 105 scholarships, are the current guys on my team, or do we need to go out and recruit more players? Are we going to go to 90 scholarships? So those are all things that, like, normally during the season, yeah, I know what a number of scholarships I got, but now with the transfers, I think we're going to see over the next few weeks, there's going to be guys that are not playing for teams because they're, sitting out and holding out, maybe for other opportunities. However, it's disguised. And I think sometimes that's one of those things. You'll see how those teams are doing. We talked about the opt-outs from bowl games, all those things, and I think every college coach knows that's going to continue to happen sooner and sooner within the season. But reality, all I can do is handle what's in here, and if there's something that may have a direct effect within our program through the NCAA and all the different things that are occurring, I got to be on top of it. And I guess what I'm sure next week that you and I will be having a conversation like, okay, how about this new thing like going on or a situation, hopefully at another university, not at ours, that I need to address and be on top of, because it inevitably something's going to rear its head, and we got to be on top. And hopefully, if we have some foresight ahead of time to make sure that we are putting ourselves in the best position to have success moving forward.
How enjoy bye week, or is it something where you kind of get antsy, like you want to play again this week and go ahead and get back into it? Is it something you look forward to?
I hate bye weeks because everybody assumes that like I'll be at home at like 4 o'clock this afternoon hanging out. Like I had more people like, hey, now that you got this week off, you want to go grab dinner, or like, hey, can you do this? Can you speak at this? We're actually busier, so like there's everybody's point, which is a great thing, but we still have practice tomorrow. We still have practice on Wednesday. Actually going to be on the road recruiting Wednesday after practice, Thursday, Friday. I think I fly back Saturday morning. Oh, by the way, recruits practice on Saturday, and you still got a game plan for South Florida. So it's actually, because it's not, for lack of a better term, it's just not as structured as you would normally think, because all these other things going on, it's harder to get into the flow, and you're actually busier than you would normally. And everybody says, well, you've always got to be busy during the week. Absolutely. But at least most of the time I know, like at 6:30 on a Thursday night, like that's my one night off. Like I actually will be home, which is a unique deal. But long-winded answer to your question, do I like bye weeks? Hell no. But they're great for the players. Hopefully we can get our guys refreshed and all that. But I think you talk to our coaching staff, man, can we just play them this Friday or this Saturday and move on? And because you love the game of football, and I love the preparation. I love practice. I love being around our guys. I love watching film. And look, I enjoy recruiting. It's a chance to showcase our program. But man, there's nothing better than actual game day. I think that's, I don't, as much as I love college football and that, I don't coach for spring practice number 12. I coach for Saturdays, or Friday nights in this circumstance. And I think we all feel the same.
Brian, going back to the roster maxes and minimums, how much time do you have to make sure that the players are staying up on this? Because this obviously, impacts opportunities that may or may not be there. Just how much time do you have to make sure that they know what's kind of going on in that round?
Yeah, I want to educate our players. I want to be truthful with them. Sometimes we'll even say, okay, hey, these 5 players transfer out of the program. Do you guys realize how much playing their time they're getting at their, sometimes it's good and bad, right? But you got to constantly educate them on stuff. I've also have talked to some of our guys when maybe they're not doing or performing or working as hard or straining like we need them to at practice, that there's a reminder that currently I have 127 guys on our roster, and if the NCAA makes me cut 22 players, we've now decided to make this a business, and it's not necessarily my decision. But if the NCAA feels like this is, or the House feels like this is the best for college student athletes, that to cut 22 players, then that's the reality of it. And so Every coach is probably using it a variety of different ways, but we educate them as best as we can in everything. Again, we're still not even sure on that. We were on a head coach's call in our conference talking about that, and it's still not set in stone. And I don't understand. It's no different than the coach-to-player communication, the tablets. Like, I don't like things that are just thrown last minute saying, hey, here's what we're going to do. Or you have an idea about it, and it's wavering. Okay, it's not going to happen. Or, wavering, it is going to happen. Well, gosh darn, I mean, you can prepare all you want, but am I doing myself justice by spending 60 hours during the season roster management for something that may never occur? And I don't want to chase ghosts, so you guys have heard me use that term, but the more we can educate our players, the better off. But until something is set in stone, sometimes it's like, man, do you want to even run down that rabbit hole if it may not occur?
This might be a total off-season question, not a in the middle of the season type question.
Well, everything's now, it's going back to what these questions, it's 365 days, so what you got?
Just with the UNLV situation with the NIL program and kind of the way that the NCAA is now asking the House to get involved, the government to get involved in that kind of stuff, what do you think is there a role, like, does the NCAA need to do more there, or is it a congressional thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Here's what I've said, and I've mentioned this in the past. As head coaches, we're not always going to agree. But I think what's happened is sometimes we poll 130 head coaches, or we'll have these head coaches meetings, or we'll, at the AFCA, right, we'll come up with, hey, here's what we feel is best. And generally it's looked at with a blind eye. We're actually told multiple times by members of the Football Oversight Committee. We've been told by members of that nobody's going to feel sorry or care what the head coaches think. And so at some point, it does me no good to sit here and say, is it House settlement? Who should get involved? Do we need to make Nick Saban the czar of college football so he can right this ship? I believe that you talk to anybody that's deep in the weeds of college football and tell you it's not an exact science. It's not perfect right now. There's a lot of things that probably aren't in the best interest of the student athletes, in our opinions, because I think sometimes we do things that everybody feels like, oh, this is great for college football. And 26 years of coaching, I'm not sure if some of the stuff that's occurring really is. But that's just one man's opinion. But it seems like a lot of the coaches, that have been around for a while, is sharing a similar opinion on things. And whoever needs to get involved, whether it's the House, whether it's Congress, whether whoever, right, NCAA. I'd like to be, okay, this is what we're doing, and can we stick with this for a couple years more than anything? That's, I think, all we want is some stability and understanding what it is, because that has not occurred, and part of that, the changes that have occurred in college football, even since I've been a head coach, right, from COVID to NIL to opt-outs to transfer portal, I mean, all these things, it's just ever-changing. The calendar, we've not been able to use one single calendar that's looked the same year in, year out, and as a head coach, you want to be organized. So, again, another long-winded answer to your question. I don't know, and that's one of those things I hate to say I don't know, but reality, I'd like to find some steady stream to things and see where it all lands, and hopefully there's whoever's getting involved can bring that to fruition, but we'll see.
Speaking of involvement, do you think that there needs to be some kind of raising of standard of the player agents that are involved, that are playing a role in who's speaking into these decisions made by players?
Well, I look, as long as I've been coaching, there's always been people in people's ears, right? There's been people in my ear, whether it's my 75-year-old mother or, an agent or other coaches or players, right? And I always tell our guys, be careful who you listen to, right? If it's a Big Daddy Cool hitting you up on Instagram and telling you he's going to make you $1 million because you need to transfer and your head coach doesn't always talk about it, just be careful with that. Because I'm always going to try to steer our guys in the right direction. And someone shared a blurb with me about Nick Saban saying that there's a lot of people that are getting in these young men's lives that may not have their best interest of them at heart. Now, is there a way to regulate it? I don't know all that. I want the players to be able to maximize what they can, certainly, and like I've said a long time. I mean, I want our players to get paid as much money as they can, and whatever they can and whatever they deserve, I'm all for. I believe in that, and I believe in our young men being able to maximize their earning potential. But I do believe there's probably people out there that may not have their best interest at heart, but that's always how it's been. I mean, even 15 years ago, it may have been Uncle Tommy that was with his hand out saying, hey, you know, this is what you need to give me, or this is what you need to do. We've had multiple kids that say, hey, you know, my dad told me I need to do this because this is going to help my draft status. So be it. So there's always going to be those uncontrollables. Is there going to be a regulation to what the agency stuff looks like? I don't know. Again, that's probably going to come down to NCAA and congressional help, but we'll see.
My last question on this topic: do you feel like that the way that things are moving in the NIL space in college athletics, has it created? You've been in coaching for a very long time. Do you feel like there's been a shift in maybe the relationship between player and coach away from what it used to be to more of a almost, and it might be a bad word, but an adversarial type?
Yeah, so I look, you know, coaching Division III football, right? Almost what you'd always say the purest form of college athletics, and have coached at every level. I still believe, and this is not to avoid the question, that it's still got to be relationship based, right? I go back and think about the relationships that I've had with a lot of our guys, right? Whether it's the Seth Hennigans, the Rock Taylors, even a guy that's only been in our program for a couple years, Chandler Martins, and I still believe that, you know, when push comes to shove, when we're going to have those conversations, it's a guy that they've trusted and instilled a love in one another, that, you know, and a trust in that bond. But I do believe that there's some of this stuff that, you know, people say it's become more transitional and transactional, right? Because there are people that, you know, recruit and say, hey, what are you going to pay me? And that's the very first question, not what's the education about, what are the facilities like, what's your culture like, and that's part of it. You know, and everybody says we're more and more like the NFL. Well, the NFL is contract based. It's not, you know, there's free agency, but it's within certain parameters. College football it's free agency every 6 months with no salary cap. So certainly there's going to be unique relationships. Some guys, I've heard players even refer to themselves, hey, you know, we're just here for 6 months to play football and get paid. I don't want that to be like that in our program. I want them to be a part of the culture that we're helping build and create. And I think part of that's, you know, who we recruit and being careful of that. I've heard a lot of coaches say, I made a mistake. I just paid a bunch of money to a bunch of guys and they don't fit well in our locker room. Well, to me, if I'm going to bring anybody part of this family into this locker room, I got to make sure it's the right fit. And are we going to be perfect on every single one? No. I mean, there's high school kids that I've known for years, and you miss one, maybe from a talent standpoint, maybe from a character standpoint, but that's our job to continue that evaluation. But as far as, you know, as long as I'm the head coach here, it's still going to be relationship based and hopefully in the right manner. I can't promise you that every program's doing that, and some of them are harder and harder to build. You know, when you're dealing with a guy that may be on his fourth or fifth college, sometimes you know exactly what you're getting and the reason why they're joining your program. So that's really a player by player deal, but we're going to continue to pour into our guys, like I tell our staff all the time, and love them and coach them and develop them in all facets of their life.
One more football question, to bring it back a little bit.
Good. Okay. No, you want to talk about South Florida's defensive line?
Taj has played a pretty significant role, especially in the last few weeks. What's impressed you about him, and especially the way he's played the last couple years?
You know, Taj plays physical. He's a downhill guy. In fact, he'll be the first to tell you sometimes he's so antsy to come down, make a play on the run. You know, he got hit with a glance, a bang 8 post over his head because he got so caught up in the RPO. But he loves football, and that's one of those things. The dude watches a ton of film. He plays with a lot of energy, but he's a physical young man. And when he comes downhill, it's with bad intentions. And so he's continued to understand the scheme. We've moved around a little bit. You know, initially he was out on the field in special teams, but he's certainly doing some good things. He's had a chance. He had a chance to make another play on the ball last Saturday, but he's got a nose and a knack for the ball that we're going to continue to need him to step up.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.